Okay, everybody, this is Marty from Dogs Blog. We're doing an audio. I'm gonna do an audio report. I'll upload it to Spreaker when I get done recording it on my computer, and then I'll upload it. Um, I think I figured out what the problem is, and it's not Spreaker. Surprisingly enough, it's me. Um, the jury was up at 1:30 this afternoon. The judge was on the bench at 1:34. Hans had no further questions when we got back in session, and Jai Gohil started his cross-examination talking about Mr. Heimlich. Um, he's been a criminalist since 1991, but he was long before that, quite a few years before that. He was working as an intern and a lot of other things for several years prior to um, his becoming a criminalist. He's had training and a lot of experience with firearms. He is a certified expert in firearms, and he's a range master, and he's pretty knowledgeable about firearms and stuff. He's written a few publications. He's read some publications, various publications in physical evidence, and he's testified as an expert on 7 different state courts, and as an expert, a 7 state court, and as an expert, I kind of screwed that one up. Sorry. Um, and he's done excavations a very few times. In fact, including this one, I think it's 3 or 4. He was involved in that San Joaquin County excavation at the well in Linden, where they did the excavation with a massive backhoe, and it mangled all the body parts. There was a lot of garbage there. Apparently, there was even engine blocks and stuff in there, but they mangled all the body parts and intermingled all the remains of. There's quite a few people in there. Apparently, a couple they still haven't identified, I think, and one of them was Cindy Vandenhider, one was Chevelle Wheeler, one was Joanne Hobson. I put up articles about Joanne Hobson. I am friends of the family, have been for many, many years. And by the way, they just received a $500,000 settlement with San Joaquin County, Sheriff Moore, and his some of the stupid things that he did up there. Um, but he was involved in that debacle, and it was really a poor choice of the way they decided to recover those remains. They did note too that in this case there was no remains located. He examined the spent bullet. That's the Mushroom .22 caliber bullet. He is unable to match that bullet definitively to any firearm. The bullet is so corroded. There's so many problems with that bullet. It does have the lands and grooves of a proprietary markings that the Marlin rifle has. There was about, they're saying about 11 million of those sold over the years, and they have a distinctive barrel markings that are transferred to the bullet when it goes down the barrel. Again, the Marlin also does not make a handgun, only the rifle. The barrel markings are distinctive, like a fingerprint. The bullet was a long rifle, so it could be fired from a handgun or a rifle, which is common in .22 caliber long rifle bullets. The witness was not really familiar. He said he had not been on the Marlin website, because apparently they do have on there the number of Marlin rifles that they have sold, but he was not familiar with those numbers. But he knows they are highly popular and has had a lot of experience with them, and they do have a Marlin rifle that they use in the DOJ in Ripon to do their testing comparisons. He says he has read a lot of literature on the Marlin rifles, but again has not done anything of recent. Jai Gohil went to show him his computer on the stand of the website and the information on there. And they talked about the lands and the grooves that are in a proprietary pattern for marlin. Nobody else is allowed to use that particular pattern. It's distinctive to marlin and marlin only. If he says there, if there is another gun, he is not familiar with it, but he doesn't take that out of a possibility. That's another gun with similar lands and grooves, but he is not familiar with them. And this guy's had a lot of experience with guns. He did do the DOJ database search, and he had no other markings other than marlin for this gun. Again, he said that doesn't exclude other guns. They're just not familiar with them. He was asked if there was a gun by Scott McFarlane that Scott McFarlane owned. It was a 22 caliber Marlin. He said there was a gun that he tested. He has no idea who it belonged to, but there was a gun that was tested. Usually when he tests these things, he has no idea who or where they got it from. They're just being requested by law enforcement to test them. They did, Jago Hill put up picture number 631 on the Elmo. And when I say the Elmo, they have this machine that puts things on an overhead display or up on the wall, screen on the wall. And an Elmo is the thing that it looks like the old overhead projectors that you used to use in school, but it puts it through this fancy projector, and then he can move around, he can point things and do things on the Elmo. The Elmo was made real popular in the O.J. Simpson trial, by the way. And it was a picture of the front part of Pop and Cork with a cop car and the crime tape taped around it. That picture was taken on August 15, 2015. He also noted that there was the front gate and the front door to Pop and Cork, because he kind of stood way back on East Street, right in the middle of the street, and took this picture. And it was so he got the gate and stuff from the fenced area along the lot and the front door of Pop and Cork. He also talked about Jago Hill kept mentioning that there were lights, street lights, in the front of the store and in the back of the store. You could see them in this particular picture. He moved on to evidence number 633, another picture, and it's a picture taken on the corner of East Street and Rose, which is the side streets, the intersection there. The Pop and Cork's right on the corner. There's a street light on the corner of Pop and Cork. It's a different street light than you saw in the other picture. He went to picture number 637. Again, I think this one's where he's over actually on Rose Street himself, looking back towards the front of Pop and Cork, and he shows a street light, and it ended up being there's two street lights in that picture, but there's one different than the other two. So there's actually three street lights in the front of that store. He took a picture. Next picture was I believe it's 647. I screwed up on my number here. I think it's 647, and it shows a string of lights between two poles in the back of Pop and Cork. They look like Christmas tree lights, or the outdoor little sparkly lights or something like that. It was hard to see them in the picture because the picture was back a little bit, but you could see something there. Picture number 651. He's looking at the person gate in the front of the store, which facing towards the back, and you can see the street light in the back of the store, or it's actually the pole itself is in the lot, but it's right up against the fence, and it lights up the alley in the back of the store. Picture number 653 shows the back lot with yet another light with a house right next door along the fence and apartments, and in back across the alley. So there's a fence line on the west side of the lot. That's across the lot from the store. There's a fence line there. There's a big two-story house almost right up against the fence. That's the way it looks in the pictures. And so it has a good view of the lot. And there was apparently there was some part of the video that Hans had played earlier to Mr. Heimlich was you could hear dogs barking from that house, and apparently there's 2 or 3 dogs there. Jai Gohil asked him if anyone went around and knocked on any doors. He was not aware that anybody had. Picture number 659 was put up. It was across the lot towards where the dig area was. And where the dig was, and you could see the stakes that were put out. They put out, I believe, it was like 6 or possibly 8 stakes out. They're long, probably 3 or 4 foot stakes. They're pounded in the ground. They have orange on the top, and it marked the area where they're going to do the dig. It also marked the area where the quadrants are. They're doing a rectangular shaped dig, and they set it up into 4 different quadrants where if something came up, they'd identify that quadrant where it was in. 684, picture 684 was just a deeper hole, showing the hole at a deeper level of dig. Picture number 685, it was a close-up of the zipper in the dirt. He says that he encountered even harder dirt, even at a very high level, just a few inches down. He started encountering harder dirt, even though he says there was a previous dig there, and there was a lot of garbage there too. So, picture number 686, it was a little deeper down. There was a hole by a pipe, but you couldn't see the pipe yet. There's a gas line that went in there, or it's a water line or something, but it looks like a gas line to me, but what do I know? I'm an idiot. But you couldn't see it yet, but the gas line was about 10 inches down, and it was right before they got to that gas line. Showed picture 687. It was a close-up of a piece of red fabric that you found in one of the quadrants in the hole, and that fabric was surrounded by hard chunks of dirt where they were breaking it away, and you could tell it was really hard pan. They were using shovels and mostly a pick, apparently, so some of that dirt was just breaking around. You can see dirt clods there. It's picture 688. It was a piece of thread. It was a mangled, what he described as a mangled piece of thread. That dig was down at around 9 or 10 inches where that thread was collected, and it was just a big ball of thread. It really didn't mean anything, I don't think. And they didn't measure every time they came across some evidence for some reason. They didn't measure. They didn't get specific with things. They took pictures, but they didn't put a ruler. They didn't put a measuring tape out. They didn't do anything. They didn't put a foot down there to give you an idea of how deep it was. Then he showed picture 689. It was an overall view of the dig, and I think that was when they were done. And there was, to give it perspective, again, he says it was about 14 inches, and that's the best he could do. He says they measured it, but he said it's about 14 inches. He's not getting specific about what it is or giving specific measurements. No one laid in the hole. It's kind of ghoulish, but you do it to give perspective, and didn't do it. Nobody could lay in this hole, or a body couldn't be put in this hole without being a big mound in the backyard and massively stinking after decomposition. There was a picture 699. It was a picture of a blue tarp, some strands of a blue tarp, I should say, by the garbage pile. If anybody's ever used a tarp, a blue tarp, or even any color tarp, you'll notice they'll fall apart pretty easily. And once they do fall apart, they fall apart pretty quickly. And they leave these little strands. A blue tarp will leave these little blue strands around of whatever material that it's made out of. So some of those strands is what he was taking a picture of by the garbage pile, because there was a blue tarp by that garbage pile, but there was no blood or remains on it. Um, 705, picture 705 was a picture of the tarp itself. It was in worn condition. Um, Again, no core samples were taken in the ground or the dirt. It is possible to request core samples through others. They don't have, the Department of Justice Crime Lab criminalists do not have soil core sample equipment. It's hard to believe, but that's true. He's saying that they could possibly get that equipment if needed. I don't know why it's not needed if they think this is a gravesite. But they didn't do it. Corey Brown never asked for samples. Marlisa Ferreira requested samples, but he did not do it due to the time frame involved. And he's talking about they're doing this dig over 3 years, probably about 3 years and 4 months, 5 months after supposedly the body was down. There was no DNA samples taken from the pipe. He said there was no signs of any material anywhere around that area on the pipe or anywhere. He didn't see anything on the pipe. He didn't look under the pipe where it could have run down or something, or decomposing body will do that. But he said he didn't see anything, so he didn't check. He also, remember, he's not a DNA specialist, so no swabs were done anywhere. He says he is aware of what the body will do and bloat when decomp begins. And personally, my personal experience, there's certain areas of the body that will bloat extreme amounts. I've seen it personally with some of my past. The testicles are one spot, the stomach is another, and I believe it's the head area will bloat dramatically too. Again, he was asked, there's no soil samples taken. This body was allegedly down 27 days in that location, and there was no sampling done to test for any type of even insects activity when where the body was supposedly put down for 27 days. Jai Gohil also asked him, about insect activity, because there's some insects that'll leave remains of themselves there, like a shell or a casing or certain things that'll show and indicate that won't deteriorate for a long, long time. And they didn't test for any of that. They apparently didn't even look. I don't really know what he did over there. But he has also asked if he had any real training on DNA degradation. He says, well, no, not really any training, but he has talked to colleagues. So he's trying to say he knows these things about talking to colleagues, but he's not an expert in that field. Remember, he's testified as an expert in firearms and soil. So he can't match the bullet, and he didn't take any soil samples. He was asked if there was a full profile on a bullet that was allegedly buried in the dirt. And he was aware of that. There was a DNA profile of this bullet that was supposed to be down in the dirt for a year and a half. And there's only a visual inspection on top of the pipe. He didn't look. The bottom of that pipe that went through the hole and went into the pole was not checked. Jai Gohil had no further questions. We took a break. When we came back from break, Marlisa Ferreira was on redirect, and she's asking about, remember, Marlisa Ferreira was at this scene on August 15, 2015, when commonly known as the Woody Walkthrough. She asked him if it was hot that day. It was August 15, 2015. Yes, it was hot. It was over 100 degrees. They took a lot of breaks for water, and I can certainly understand that. She was asked what the heat will do to the soil. And he says, in general, harsh heats make soil harder. Well, we all know that. I mean, that doesn't take an expert to do that. If a soil's not getting moisture, it's going to get harder. It's going to compact, whatever. During the month of March in this area, soil could be a bit different during rainy seasons. Well, I'm sorry, that was the middle of the drought. We had no rainy seasons during that time. It was not raining. In fact, I put up a weather report a couple of years back now on the weather from March 30th, 2012 to April 26th, 27th, 2012. And it's an average temperature of 70 degrees over that 27-day period, whatever it is. And so there was no rain or anything else during that time. If you search my site, there is an article about that. He was also told that a rotor tiller was used in the yard. The rotor tiller, somebody had went to put in a garden at one time. That rotor tiller, Scott McFarland had taken his rotor tiller over there. They had tilled the lot. They were going to plant a garden, do some things over there. The rotor tiller was eventually confiscated, and it's still, my understanding, it's never been returned as of yet. But he says he could not eliminate the rotor tiller was used in the lot. Now, he doesn't confirm something that happened. He confirms something didn't happen. That's how the process that he does. He's saying he's not confirming a body was there in the dig. He was trying to confirm there was no body there in the dig. He was trying to confirm there was no rotor tilling done. There was no disking done on the 9th Street property, things like that. So he could not he cannot confirm or deny rotor tilling was a possibility there. He said Marlissa Farron was asking about the Marlin rifle came up as a match. But again, he is not confirming, that's there is other matches possibility that he's not aware of. So he's always leaving that possibility out there because it means he doesn't know. And that's the same thought process that he uses for the dig, which they covered a little bit. A backhoe, because there were some questions about a backhoe used in that area once before. She asked him if it would leave markings. They have like 3 prongs on the bucket, 3 or 4 prongs or whatever it is on the bucket. But there was no indicators on marks on that dig, anything like a backhoe had been used there. He had been given information that the tarp inspected was the one used. That's not what Woody testified to, but it's a blue tarp. He said he wrapped the body up in a tarp, cut the fingers and toes off, wrapped the body up in the tarp, which means there's a lot of blood and a lot of blood everywhere, and so there'd be bodily fluids running around in there, and probably. But he did wrap the body up in a tarp, but I don't know how sealed it was, and the fingers and toes were thrown in there, apparently with it. He had no idea how old the tarp was that was used to wrap the body up when it was put in the hole. In 27 days, there's no reason to believe that the tarp degraded in that time. And he was asked if the dirt around the pipe was looser than anywhere else, and he said no, it was about the same. He was asked about the pick used to scrape soil layers off the walls and the floors of the dig area. It's very hard dirt. All they could do is just chip off a little bit of dirt at a time with the pick. She asked him if he measured from the fence line by the alley to the stakes in the dig area. And he did. He did measure that for some reason, but didn't measure other things. So the from the south fence to the dig southeast stake, remember that the dig is running almost north to south. It's pretty close to that. So the southeast stake is 15 feet 7 inches. I'm sorry, 1 inch. 15 feet 1 inch. The southwest stake is 19 feet 6 inches. The northwest is 18 feet 11 inches, and the northeast is 14 feet 11 inches. That's quite a discrepancy on some of the holes that are almost right next to each other, and or the stakes that are almost right next to each other and stuff. So he said that no ground piercing radar, what they call GPR, are used for these type of searches. They're generally used in larger areas where it's unknown where subjects or a body or whatever may be. It would not be more useful than what they did. She also asked him why he didn't do any core samples. He says he's not expecting to find anything after 3 years, and with all the conditions, there wouldn't be anything left. Again, using his theory of to falsify something, the falsify theory would be the hole dug there. He could not disprove that there was a hole dug there and a body had been laid there for that time period. He couldn't disprove that. He doesn't try to prove things, he tries to disprove things. He has also asked, and he showed him picture 682, I believe it is, and talking about the vegetation that was removed from the top of the hole, and it and other areas. She asked him if there was other areas around the lot that was kind of, there wasn't a real thick brush or anything on that hole. There was just there were some bare spots and stuff like that. And showing picture number 692, he never knew about the pipe prior. Nobody informed him of a pipe or anything prior to that. They didn't know it was there, is what it comes down to. He says the walls of the dig area have a minimum of 2 separate layers. So there's a thin layer, he said, was about 2 inches thick. The rest of it, which would be about a foot, was another layer. He said there possibly more, but it didn't appear to be. He was not paying attention to the dogs barking, so it's unknown how many or when or where they were barking from. He said, and they talked about Robert Woody as the person pointing to the area that needed to be dug. So the person pointing to the dig area was very close to the general location of where this spot was. Well, there were several other spots that he didn't check too that showed that it looked like some garbage had been buried in those other spots too, but they didn't check them. There was no other location noted. Again, back to the firearm. She asked him what kind of hole would what would the hole look like on the 22 caliber shell that pierced, say, a piece of paper? And he says, his response was, well, that's kind of wishy-washy, quote unquote. That's what he said. He said the different materials react differently to a bullet passing through. To establish a caliber based on the hole size, they're not able to do, especially with cotton fibers. Again, you go back to what the other expert from Sacramento said, Faye Springer, that it could have been anywhere from a 22 to a 40 or 45 caliber bullet, because it expands the fibers and then it retracts, so it doesn't leave just a certain size of hole in that type of material. It may be in paper targets or other things that may leave different types, but that's still not definitive either, based on what he said. He talked about using the T-bar, the probe. He's just looking for a line of hard area and a soft area just off to that. So the soft area would be where they want to dig. um, and then they staked it out. Now remember, they didn't do, the probe doesn't have any measurements on it. The probe doesn't have any markers for inches or feet. The probe doesn't have any soil compression gauges. This is a metal bar with a pointed end that goes in the ground. It goes up to a T handle on the top. That's it. So he puts his weight on it, checks the ground, and he moves on until he finds softer soil, and then that's where they start staking it out after he went around this area and decided that'd be the dig area. He said that soil samples, it is absolutely preferred that the soil samples be done at the time when they locate a body or right away if their body's been there. And that's common knowledge there. He says there's potential changes that occur that do not leave a good sample. And again, he's talking about soil degrades DNA, it degrades hemoglobin, but again, there's also insect activity that can show you things, and they leave a residue. They'll leave shells, they'll leave casings, they'll leave different things. They'll leave poop. Marlissa Ferrer was asking about if body fluids can still be found on a bullet like this, because they said the bullet was buried under the ground. They said it could be protected by clothing. They can keep wrap a tarp around the body, can keep the spread of fluids. It's possible. Again, he noted that the firearm 16 grooves in a twist. There's no other marks. That bullet cannot be confirmed to any firearm because of the condition of the bullet. Again, he talked about the 16 grooves being proprietary to Marlin rifles, and they have rights to those grooves, and no one else can use it. But he's still saying there could be an unknown weapon out there, but Marlin has proprietary rights to that particular grooving pattern, the lands and grooves of that barrel. She asked him in regards to the bugs and the larvae are not unlikely, but none noted. And he says it probably wouldn't be if it was wrapped in a tarp, but that doesn't necessarily inhibit insect use either. The insects, he says, they have an incredible way of finding a body like that, and they have an incredible way of moving on when they're done with a body like that to find the next thing that they're going to do. She asked him she was having a hard time getting these questions out around on these questions here. She was trying to get what would the temperature of the bullet be if it has enough burn to burn through fibers. And he says, well, the bullet wouldn't be that hot. He says it's the primer is the one that would be that hot. And the powder burn is not necessarily enough to burn all the fibers. She was also trying to get at that the burn of the powder and stuff, the firing of the bullet, would burn away DNA. Talking about DNA surviving the firing process, and she could never really get the question out. The judge helped her out with that, like always. There was a long series of questions about DNA and from the bullet and stuff. Finally, they ended up in a sidebar. The attorneys kept objecting because she couldn't get the question out right. Ended up in a sidebar, and when it came back from the sidebar, it moved on to a different line of questioning. She talked about the thread, the white thread, the ball of mass or whatever it is, the tangled mass that he called it, I think, is an unknown type of fiber. The report he wrote on this was written 6 months after he did the dig. And he said that was because he had later on, Marlissa Ferreira had made some further testing, asked him to do some further testing on some things, so he couldn't write the report until he was done with all that testing, and run some other samples and some other things apparently. So he had to finish the testing before he wrote the report. Marlissa Ferreira had no more further questions. a lot of Percy Martinez asked him if there was a lot of garbage when he first dug. He says at the top there was some garbage. There was plastic bags, grocery bags, and things like that, and some other things. But he says not when he got lower. He said there was 3 people digging in shifts, taking turns digging because it was hot, and they had to take water breaks, and so they were taking turns doing the digging. They weren't all digging at once. He said there wasn't enough room there to do all the digging at once anyway. And it took them 3 people taking turns digging with picks and shovels. It took them about 5 hours total digging time. He was there about 5 hours and 45 minutes because he left right after he was done with the dig. He had to load up all his equipment and stuff, so it took another half hour or so. And he said the first couple of inches, he's not really unsure how long it took. He took no, he had no notes taken while he was doing the dig. And remember, he was referring to this publication by Attorney Hans about excavation of bodies and certain things you do. And one of the things it said in that book was that you have an associate take notes of everything you're doing. Well, they didn't do that. He referred to that book, but then apparently didn't abide by several things that the book said. And he said he was told that was a garbage pit there. Unknown when that was used as a garbage pit, though. He says in 3 years' time he cannot give any specifics on compaction of the ground compacting down and how long it takes for the ground to do what it is. Remember, there wasn't a lot of water back then those days. It was during the drought years, and so there's really no way to tell. In regards to the bullet, came from a rifle. It's got the distinction of being a Marlin rifle. They have proprietary hold on that particular lands and grooves that bullet came out of. And there was unknown tarp condition that was used in the hole. There was no indicators, he said, of a backhoe. These are all questions Percy was going over again. He said, was told that the fingers and toes were cut off, but there's no indication of blood or decomposition. He was looking for visuals, something to give him something to work with, and he saw none. He did not check the soil for moisture other than by touch. He said he touched it, he felt the feel of the soil. There was no background testing that was done either from, say, a reference sample from a different area of the yard. There was nothing like that was done. He just dug out the ditch. It took him 5 hours to do it. It took Robert Woody 10 minutes, according to Woody. He asked him about the pipe that was in the hole. It went across the hole. It looked like a gas line to me. More than likely was, I think, but it could have been water. But it looked too small for water. It was probably about a half-inch diameter hole pipe. And he was asked if it took him about 10 minutes to do the first 2 inches, and he says he had no idea, but it probably took longer than that. He also said again that he was trying to disprove that there's a hole there, that 2-foot hole. He's unable to confirm that there was a hole 10 to 14 inches deep. That was where we broke for the evening. The jury was sent out at 2:06. They were sent home for the night. The jury is coming back at 9:30 in the morning, and attorneys are back in court at 9 a.m. in the morning. So that's where we're at for tomorrow. He'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully they'll get him done tomorrow because everybody's on recross and redirect. We'll see how that goes. Just a note too for anybody that may not have heard it. Kurt Bunch, the poll I put up was very popular with quite a few people, including some friends or something of Kurt Bunch, and there was over 15,500 votes cast total, and it was 64% in favor of Kurt Bunch. Deserves to be called an asshole, as he was in court the other day, a couple weeks ago now, I guess. So I appreciate everybody's activity on there. Some comments were made both ways. I think I know who made them on Kurt Bunch's side. It's typical stuff that he does. He's done. So there was some of the comments that have been made. Those type of comments have been made before in regards to myself and Tom. So we know where that comes from. When the red light is on, click, click, buzz, buzz, record, record. So that's where we're at. Back tomorrow at 9:30. Be a noontime report up. Tom should be there in the morning. Get a report from him also. So remember, I have a PayPal button on the bottom of each report. If you want to donate, I appreciate the donates. Donations, they've been steady. They haven't been real big. A couple of cases, there's been a couple of people that have donated nice, generous donations, but it's been real steady, and I appreciate it. It's paying the bills, and there's more coming up here that I got to do. Another transcript I got to buy, and some other things going on. I appreciate the support. I really do. Don't forget my sponsors, Merced Tile Supply, down in Merced on Highway 59. Yeah, if you're going to redo a kitchen or a bathroom or your house or your floors, you need to talk to this guy first. Talk to Doug Barton down at Merced Tile Supply. Good guy. He really is. He'll take care of you. He's been around, been doing this stuff for a long time. Doug Maynor, attorney at law, over there at 15th and J in the old Masons building over there. Beautiful building. He's on the first floor. Go talk to him. So that's all I got. I appreciate the support. I'm sorry about the snafu earlier, so I had to do this recording. I figured out what I screwed up. It was me. It wasn't anybody else. So I kind of messed around with things and tried to move things around, and I messed it up. So it's my fault. Remember what I say. Don't take my word for it. Come to court and find out for yourself. Good night, everybody.